All right, Judges chapter 3, let's call this one To Know War because it comes roughly out of the first couple of verses of the chapter that read, "Now these are the nations that the Lord left to test Israel by them, that is, all in Israel who had not experienced all the wars in Canaan. It was only in order that the generations of the people of Israel might know war, to teach war to those who had not known it before." But understand, this is a chapter in which we're going to see the first of the named judges, I believe, because we're going to see three judges, one by the name of Othniel, who is going to be the nephew of Caleb. Caleb, of course, an individual we saw who God mentioned as being one of the only two spies to give an accurate report of what was possible in the promised land. He was also noted as, in 85 years of age, still having the strength for war and not being afraid to go forward and take his portion of territory that seemed to be inhabited by a giant. Othniel, his nephew, delivered Israel from a period of 8 years of servitude to one of these nations we read about in the first two verses, and he provided them 40 years of peace. He was followed by a man named Ehud, who was noted for being left-handed, but delivered Israel by stabbing a king by the name of Eglon while he was bringing tribute. Tribute is one of the things that was required of Israel when they were under the oppression of one of the nations that God had delivered them over into the hands of. And so they spent roughly 18 years in the service of Eglon, but Ehud delivered them roughly 80 years of peace. And finally, it's a man by the name of Shamgar who judged Israel, and we don't have as much detail about his deliverance other than being told that he killed 600 Philistines with an ox goad during his term as a judge. But understand, going back to the whole concept of blessing and curses, when God promised them the promised land and gave them the whole option of blessing and curses, he never told them that if you do well, I will bring you to no war so that you can appreciate your territory. No, he told them if they did well, he was simply going to bless them. And so, as we mentioned in the previous chapter, when God originally gave them judges, he didn't simply deliver a series of judges because they had to continually return back into hard times. We said their suffering was unnecessary because after the judges would deliver them, they would also give them counsel as to how to stay out of trouble so they wouldn't need judges in the future. But the people accepted the help of the judges without accepting their advice. Look at it this way. There are times in life where you may have to help a friend out. A friend may be eager because they're desperate to accept your help, but they may resent the fact that you would offer them advice as to how not to get back into trouble. So in a situation where they accept your help, but not your advice, but in a short period of time come back to you for help again, at a certain point that gets old. And that's what's going on with Israel in this circumstance. Even though they are dealing with needless suffering, God is leaving them in a place where needless suffering sinks in to the point where they're willing to listen. And that may be a lesson for all of us. On the one hand, God willing, we will be the kind of people who are eager to listen to God without having to endure needless suffering to open up our ears. But on the other hand, to the degree we're in the position of trying to help friends, hopefully we will have God's wisdom in discerning which friends are willing to listen to reason along with the help that we give them, as opposed to those who simply need to spend some time, as we say in modern days, bottoming out, so that even though they may be experiencing needless suffering, they will finally experience something that will help them make a turnaround, whether it's with our assistance or with the assistance of someone else. Because after a while, we probably have to ask ourselves, is the help that I'm giving actually helping? So as we often say, God's best to you as you go forward in him. This time, God willing, allowing him to lead us in ways that will help us to become successful without enduring needless suffering, but also seeking God's wisdom for the ways in which our friends, family, and others would best be able to hear us.